New York State DOT, making your standard.
Their erosion control site.
Yeah, and they work better than a silt fence. And they support. How many million pounds of food waste we have needing to be composted in the next 16 years? You can't figure out what to do with it. For every million pounds of food waste, there's 2 million pounds of compost that's going to be created. We got to figure out what to do with this and use it and make it a real, and it is a real market. So that's what that answers the question. I tend to go
like. Probably to start off with what excites me about it is I feel like it's very seldom that you get a chance to solve like real world problems. You know, like I feel like people say, you know, hey, what would you do if you became a billionaire, right? Oh, well, I'll interesting conversations with different license holders, and it's always just like, you know, once again, transparently, it comes down to the price point. Like, oh, I'm paying this. Well, it's like you're paying something, right? And it's either our environment's going to pay or you're going to continue to pay. So I feel like, you know, I don't really like to do a lot of the back and forth because everybody has a belief system that they believe in for a reason, whether it's a financial reason, a personal reason, emotional reason, whatever that looks like for you. But, you know, like I said, I don't like to do a lot of back and forth. It's just like there is an ultimatum, and it's like eventually, you know, like I said a few questions back, that's why we are lobbying, because eventually like it won't be option. You know, like I said, hope that kind of gives you guys a little insight into how aggressive we get with this at times. Because it's like, yeah, it's just like do your part. Like, you know, do your part.
But it's over here too. On the packaging side that I mentioned before, I don't want to seem so cynical about it, but I don't have much great feeling about the consumer packaged goods industry within cannabis. I just don't. So I'll just kind of skip over that one. But the composting, which I don't really plan to sell, but the idea of composting for me, just like sharing that idea with everyone, sharing it with farmers, sharing it with, because there's so many people that just put their waste in the trash and just like, that's just where their waste goes. And it's like, how much organic material are we putting into plastic bags and sealing up and then throwing in a pile? Like, what are we doing? Like all that stuff, you can just dump it. Like food waste, you can just go into the woods and dump it in the woods. And like, there's all kinds of regulatory things, right? You can get in trouble, you can get fined, but if you have a farm, you can do all those things. And I've done so many different experiments. It doesn't matter how you put food out on the ground, it goes away. In one way or another, it disappears. So like, why wouldn't we want to make it, and it doesn't just disappear, that's the best part, right? It turns into something that's feeding another generation of plants, like feeding you as a human, it's feeding the soil, it's like, so it becomes so much more of a thing. And so that's what I'm most excited about, just sharing that idea to more and more people and getting people excited about composting.
Yeah, composting is what I live and breathe pretty much. It's important for us to do this, and I'll just tell you a story about Westchester County's leaves are conveyed to Orange County black dirt, all of them. None of them stay in Westchester County, to the point where their soils are trash. They have no water holding capacity. They don't have anything. New Jersey's leaves go to Orangeburg. Down in all of those leaves are moved all there. They don't go back to their communities unless homeowners decide to go and pick up compost and bring it back. But we've moved this organic matter all over the place at Westchester County. It's millions. They're coming across the bridge. They're paying tolls. They're doing, you know, and we have to keep things local. We have to do things that way. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, one other story, Carrier Corporation, air conditioning, heating in Syracuse, New York. They decided that they were going to keep their food waste. They have hundreds of employees. They have a cafeteria. So they compost their food waste right on site, right in Syracuse. So we all can do this if we choose to. But everybody thinks there's that factor, and I don't want to do it. So if I could put that way, our soils are trashed all over the world. We're no better in the United States than they are in other places. We just need to keep circulating those organics. Right. We're all part of the solution. But I loved your Taylor, just throwing the garbage waste out, because that's what I've resorted to in the household. It's just amazing. You just throw it out there and it's gone. I mean, you really get to the point where you can't put it in the garbage because all you have to do is walk a few feet. Now, I know that there's cities you can't do that, but if you have any yard at all, it's not even there the next morning. I don't know what happens to it, but I can only encourage people to just be more conscientious about consumer choices and what are you buying, and just be more mindful. And recycling is very complicated, so it's more about preventing it than the choices to what you're choosing to buy more than how to get rid of it. It's actually zero waste comes from each and every one of us making sound decisions when we're purchasing, and of course support the movement of the movement, I call it, or there is a movement in making the earth and the farms healthier, so make sound choices as consumers.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to take
Just one last thought. We were talking about. Oh, I lost that thought. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That was because of the lunch.
Well, if you think of it, let us know. So now we're going to take some questions from the audience. So just raise your hand and I'll come around you with the mic so you can ask away. All right.
Thank you. I'm really curious. I'm sure all of you face the issue of toxins and plastics contamination in compost. I'd love to know what you're doing about that, or if that's actually an issue that you're facing.
I guess I'll
You mentioned the label.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. It's the plastics that we can't see that are scarier for me than anything else. You can see your wrappers, you can see all that stuff, but there are 15,000 PFAS chemicals out there, and they're in our packaging, they're on our packaging, they're in our dental floss. It's all of these things, and they're pervasive. And at Cornell, we are starting to do. We're trying to. We don't even have labs that are capable of checking for most of these things. So we're trying to develop the labs. DEC has put one in at ESF, Environmental Science and Forestry. But the commercial labs, it's almost impossible to use them, and it takes years for you to get any results back. So you don't know anything. So we are catching up on those plastics that we can't see right now. We have a new person that's coming on, a professor that's just going to be dealing with PFAS at Cornell, and he starts January 1. And he's been doing this stuff around already, so he will be with us. And I hope that that's going to answer more questions. I have done quite a bit of testing myself with different labs, jump into different projects and stuff like that with some of the PFAS. We can't tell by looking at it. That black gold, just because it looks like black gold, doesn't mean anything. We've got to test those things and see what's in them.
Our food scrap collection, which would be the real source for plastic. These are people who have self-selected to participate in the composting program. And the most persistent problem I've had is people putting compostable plastic bags into their waste stream. And it has taken, we've gotten past it, but it's taken 6 months of persistent re-education to really explain to people. And I had to send out test results that showed that this stuff wasn't really compostable, and it's not because people are aggressive, passive aggressive about it. It says on the package it's a compostable bag, and it makes it a lot easier for them to throw their food scraps into the bin. So you know, there are places in the world where it costs a lot of money to throw away plastic packaging. And in those places in the world, people take their stuff apart and take the packaging off in the supermarket and throw it away there so they don't have to bring it home and pay to have it carted. So, I mean, I want things to be easy, but that may be where we have to go so people can make the real decision, the better decision, that also is a better financial decision.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's still all about everybody, and how many times you wash your clothes, how many times you decide to wash your hair, products you use. It's all about decreasing your footprint, and once you get part of the movement, it's really liberating, and we have to feel good about something. I just want to empower everybody to make those decisions, because when you mention microplastics and in the water, it's really everybody. It's not you, it's not me, it's all of us. So if all of us make every day a little bit of a conscious choice to make those decisions, not having to wash, be mindful of all these little things that we can do every day. How much toothpaste you use. You know, you don't have to be obsessive, and you don't have to feel, you can be empowered by that movement.
I was gonna say, I don't, just kind of think about your question. I don't really have anything on composting, but I know Amy was saying that, you know, she's familiar with the refuse from the processing, right? So the process is more specifically the ethanol, that's essentially stripping a lot of the cannabinoids off of the plant. So one thing that we have seen is certain endpoints for what we do with that ethanol when we collect it sometimes. We'll have to get that ethanol tested to see what was actually, you know, because processes can vary between process and processor. So that was, you know, like I said, nothing specific on composting, but we have seen that kind of come into play with, okay, well, what, you know, between what type of machinery are you using, what type of lubricants are you using, and, you know, those go into the ethanol, which then have some sort of say in how we can recycle it, what we can do, what we can do.
Can I just add one thing to that? Sorry. One thing I think of too is which I'm sure everyone thinks about, but like clothing is a huge one. I was like, you know, I did environmental science in college, and I've always been like an outdoorsman. I've done tons of backpacking and all that, and like one day you realize like all that light material that you're out in the woods with for years, you're just dropping plastic everywhere you go. And so I've been on this like crusade, I've called it, the past like 4 years of trying to go back to natural fibers, which it just goes into like rooms like this and people talking about it, because like try to go back to all natural fibers. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. And like the reality of plastic in general is like as not even just a country, as a world, we've like bolstered plastic to this. It's just, yeah, it's used for everything. It's the lightest, it's the easiest to make. All of our manufacturing, like everything has just been based off of plastic. And it's a hard like turnaround that needs to be made. Like when I think about it, it's like full scale, top to bottom industry change that has to happen. What exactly that looks like, I don't know, but I think it starts in rooms like this.
And more action.
Ban plastics.
That's behind you, behind you.
I'll hand it to you next, okay? Okay. One thing I haven't heard you talk about as a product from compost, and I believe there's a company in Vermont that's doing this, which is the heat. You know, using compost piles to create heat for greenhouses and so forth. I don't know whether you've built chutes that are, you know, 6 foot wide, 6 foot deep, with running with, you know, PVC plastic pipes to greenhouse.
We have a technology out there called AgriLab technology. And
Yes,
we have
AgriLab.
used it on Vermont compost farms. There is a facility in Brattleboro that I'm going to on Monday.
Richard,
I'm sorry?
the Richard,
No, not Richard. It's actually in Brattleboro downtown. It's the municipality because they're taking in harder to deal with materials. So they're taking in chickens and eggs. So I'm going down there to deal with that, but they've got one in place there that is an agri-like technology. And basically it takes the heat from compost. We usually blow heat through compost. This sucks heat through compost. I can say these words in public. Second law, you know, in this stuff. Because it sucks the air through and the air goes into isobar exchangers, and they either heat hot water with these, they have piped it directly into greenhouses, and they can heat water, put it through the floors of barns and things like that. So they're doing heat transfer. There's a person called John Payne that he's gone. I think he's dead and gone at this point, but he used to put coils in compost piles and then run water through them or air through them and pick up that heat.
In Ithaca, yeah, he was doing that.
Huh?
In Ithaca, I thought he was doing that, right?
I
There was a
don't
guy in
think
Ithaca
so.
doing it.
I don't think he was in.
There was a guy
But
in Ithaca doing it like 25 years
There
ago.
was a greenhouse that we were working on that they were forcing air around through it. And to do that, you don't even need, you can just use wood chips. I was asked to do something with algae production in Maine. And they said, we just need 5 degrees. And I said, okay, run pipes through wood chip piles. They'll sustain the heat longer because it doesn't break down as fast. And as long as there's moisture in there and some fines and stuff like that, it all works. And it gave them their 5 degrees that they needed. They didn't need 20 degrees. They just needed 5 degrees. So.
Yeah, our first expansion in the composting that we're doing will be to locate a pile next to a greenhouse and try this. We'll just reverse the fans, pull air through it. So,
and the other comment before I hand it on to this gentleman is one time I was approached by a man who was really concerned in Vermont that the state had used salt on the roads in order to propel more business to the body shops, and in Massachusetts apparently they were using a barley instead of a salt, and so that I just bring that up in case there's, hemp is amazing. If there's anything that we can make that leap away from the salt and into something that's bio-based, that's now I'm going to give it to this gentleman. Here you go.
Thanks. Okay, short story leading to a question. Growing up as a little kid, inner city Chicago, my mother always had a small garden, and one year the Chicago sewer department said, we have this new stuff called New Earth, and we're giving it away free to anybody who's got a garden. So we got in the car, we got a couple 5-gallon buckets, and my mother spread this stuff, and we had great tomatoes that year. The next year, we got a call or whatever, news article, cadmium in New Earth, remove whatever you put down because you're poisoning yourself. So are there any certifications for compost?
So anything with the only certifications, the only let's see that we do is for biosolids compost, and that's human shit. So it's composted, it's higher in heavy metals, it's going to be higher in PFAS. We don't look for hormones even in all of that, and there's not a lot of real regulation there. They're looking at nutrients, they're looking at metals. They haven't started to look at PFAS yet, and that's where we're going at Cornell and lots of other places with this, is to see what's in it. And we have had a lot of problems with cocktailing. In Orange County, we had a big problem with cocktailing where they were bringing material out of New York City, dredged material out of New York City that had heavy, contaminants in the sediments. They're bringing it upstate because why not? But it's the whole night soil thing, and I'm not opposed to biosolids use as long as it's really clean. It's got to be clean and not just class A and class B. It's got to be better than that.
The problem is most sewer systems are both municipal clean waste and industrial waste mixed together. And so there's no way to separate that once it comes out the other end. It's very.
So run out of your household, it's all your products. It's all the products that are adding it all in.
The light manufacturing is way worse than all those.
I know.
I think the work that scientists at Carrying and Speed Ecosystem Studies did in Baltimore, I believe, where they traced the path of chemicals, antidepressants, and heroin, and everything in the streams, depending on if you're in the suburbs or the inner city. It was insane, and affecting the flora and fauna in the water.
We look at the input in a lot of different systems, and it is, are the nutrients in the feed? Because we've mentioned, somebody just mentioned Richardson Institute. Is it in the feed? Is it in the poop? What is in each component of that if it's separated out? And we're doing some work on urine as well at Cornell. But there's a lot of people that are working on this. Are the drugs breaking down? We don't know that, and it's a hard one to answer. So, and the hormones are another thing. We've got all of these hormones out there that we're using, and our bodies shed hormones all the time. Are we affecting our water supply?
Well, we probably are, and we need to accept the fact that we are part of our environment, and our environment is a part of us, and we're just not going to be able to separate it all at once. It's a process. It's going to take many, many lifetimes. As long as we awaken our consciousness and reducing our footprint is really a step forward, because even the trees have contaminants in them now. So it's nothing to even be afraid of. It's more of an awakening, and that's all I can impress, that we are the solution. And it's very small baby steps, and it's just continuous, and it will always be continuous. Once you click into this consciousness, it's actually becomes liberating instead of entrapment, right? If our trees are contaminated, that's already an indication. We're all a part of the solution. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we have time for one last short question from the audience. Anybody got a burning question? Larry, ready.
So, Jean, can you talk about the relative cost and maybe effectiveness of anaerobic digesters versus the type of composting systems that you're using? I know there's an initiative in Ontario County right now, a bunch of dairy farms getting together to try to build an anaerobic digester because they can't handle all the manure that they've got right now. There're just not enough fields for them to put the manure back onto. So their vision is we'll put it into the anaerobic digester. That will create a very high value fertilizer compound, basically, that they can deal with. So can you speak about that, the relative?
Yeah. Digesters are probably an option, but I don't know if there are, it depends on the material. In order to use a digester, we have to liquefy things. So it's either liquid manures that go into our digesters or human manure goes into our digesters. So we have a lot of those. Then when we start adding food and other materials, if we wanted to put cannabis in, chip in there or something like that, fresh things tend to float and the poop tends to sink because it's already pre-processed. Our body is a digester, so it's pre-processed. There's not a lot of energy that comes out of just straight food waste. We are using it some, and we have one facility in Leedsport where we set it up. Soil and Water actually got the funding to set that one up, where we would take manure from from the farms, move it to the centralized digester, only at 5 miles, so they had to be within 5 miles. So we did that, and it never was able to function. They never able to get that really going. And now we've got a waste industry group that is trying to run it. It's about our 3rd or 4th waste industry group that's trying to run it and make that actually work. And they are very, very specific about what they'll accept in that digester, so that it makes sure that it's actually working. And we have some others there are other examples that are on farms. We have probably 22 on farms that are still working. And we have lots for human waste, but mostly we flare all that gas. And I don't know why we're doing that, but that's what happens. We don't capture it, use it, we flare it. And that can be really problematic. It's all part of processing and getting someplace, but our local, talk about local laws and stuff like that, that's where we can make impact on our, because I would love to believe that everybody will do the right thing. But it doesn't happen. 1 person at a time. I know, absolutely. 1 person at a time, but boy, there are so many people that are walking in the other direction.
You kept mentioning 300 parts of carbon and nitrogen, and I just wanted to put it into reference for the audience. It's 15-to-1 is a magic number. It almost takes care of itself. You put the food waste, the nitrogen, and the leaves and the carbon. So just think of that 15-to-1, and it actually creates magic out there. It's not as complicated as it sounds.
It's absolutely.
I have a question back about that, what you were talking about, Greg. So the economic problem was that the farmers couldn't afford the time of spreading all that manure on the field, or they were being forced not to because of contamination issues?
CAFO regulations.
So the concentrated digester refuse has probably just as much of those elements in it. It's just more concentrated. So that's a stupid regulation issue. That's not but what's the difference? You're still spreading the same amount of PK.
There are energy ones also that are like, you can't cross the road with a line because such and such doesn't get paid. There's all kinds of really weird regulations that go along with digesters.
Yeah.
So did you go to the McEnroe?
No.
Did you go to the McEnroe visit?
No.
Those guys spread 300 tons of compost on corn. That's right. They spread 40 tons an acre of compost on a cornfield to see what and they got 300. They had got 300 bushel corn by using that much compost. I mean, sorry.
It just doesn't match. It doesn't match.
We have to have incentives. In New York State, we're a dairy state. So we have lots of dairy manure. We have lots of horse manure also. And both of those are good nutrient things. Those are the things that really should be going back onto our farms. And food waste is fine. Circular economy, all that stuff in the loop is fine. I think we have to take the biosolids out and actually deal with that and other things.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit here at the end, there are some farms in New York State doing really innovative work in this field, like Spruce Haven Dairy Farm, which is up around Cuba Lake. They have an anaerobic digester, and they sell some of the gas that comes off of that back into the system. But in addition to that, they're working with Dr. Johannes Lehman at Cornell, who works on biochar. If you don't know what biochar is, it is just like a more permanent carbon form of whatever source material that's been pyrolyzed. So it's in a stable form that you can apply on the fields, for example, whatever. But they're trying to work that into the loop to kind of take care of some of this issue too. So.
Absolutely, and biochar is one of those things that we are looking at more and more. And I know that Daniela actually did some charring of cannabis hemp and stuff. So
They're 2 minutes past
some
break.
biochar is pyrolysis.
Right here.
Great.
It
Right here.
can solve some problems. I
We're
think
doing a
looking
break
at
right now
also,
till
and
3:30.
knowing
I mean
how
3:20.
Absolutely.
we really don't.
So we should be
know.
here.
We haven't
Totally. Well, with that, we have 3 minutes. So if there are any closing things you want to say in the next 3 minutes, let me know and feel free to say it.
The clock starts now.
Logistics. I would say reach one, teach one. I feel like, like Amy's saying, like everybody's saying, it's our part. And like I was also saying, do your part. So, if you were leaving here and say, well, what does it mean when you say do your part? Just tell somebody about what you learned here today. That's a start.
Also, don't fall into the trap in this country of letting corporations blame all of us for causing all the problems. Because we don't. What we do doesn't even touch what, one billionaire does in a year. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Agreed.
You have the power.
That's great. All right. So without further ado, let's give these guys a round of applause. Thank you for being here with us today. So now we're going to go into a brief break. We're going to come back in 10 minutes. We're going to talk all about building with hemp.
Got it? Yes. It's still recording. So watch this. Oh, no.
natural building specifically. And what that really is for us is kind of sourcing local materials that are natural and building homes for them. So straw bale and timber frame is one kind of method we've worked with for quite some time. It's timber frame out of wood, stacking straw bales around that timber frame and plastering that with earthen plasters. So that's a method we've been working with, say, about 15 years. But the past couple of years, we got into hempcrete, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And just briefly want to thank Chris Hewitt and Professor Larry Smart for looping us into what Cornell and Ulster County are up to with hemp, which is very interesting. So building with hemp in New York, right? So 2 years ago, we completed a house out of hempcrete in Accord, which is a town in Ulster County. And I think I want to focus on this one material because it's probably the lowest hanging fruit in terms of a hemp material that you can build with. But I also want to say that it is code compliant. In 2024, hempcrete or hemp-lime was added into the International Residential Building Code, which Henry is actually part of. He'll be on the building panel in a minute, so he could speak more to that if people have questions about the code revolving around hemp. So, but when we're talking about building with hemp, what are we really talking about, right? We're talking mostly about insulation. As I think was touched upon in the bedding presentation, hempcrete, or rather the herd of hemp, has some pretty unique qualities that make it a good insulation material.
It's really hard to hear you. If you move the mic a little closer, maybe. I don't know.
Is that better?
Yeah,
you gotta be close to it.
Maybe we can turn it up a little.
Use the loud one.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Right. So types of hemp building material or building materials made out of hemp, right? There's a few here actually. Hempitecture makes a bat out of hemp, and that's made from the fiber of the plant. Hempcrete or hemp-lime is using the hemp herd, so that's the inner stalk of the hemp plant. There's also hemp boards that are kind of more in the development phase at the moment. There's some in Europe that are made out of hemp lime, so that's like a harder board, but those are probably coming a little later down the line. There's also structural reinforcement properties of building with hemp. This is a little less well understood in this country, at least at the moment, but hemp lime is, hemp herd mixed with lime. It's like a slurry or a liquid kind of material that when you put it in the walls of a building, it hardens, right? And when it hardens, that creates a better structure for the building, and that's measurable, right? I know there are some places currently developing hemp rebar, which would be an interesting development, and then there's also hempcrete block, which is sort of comparable to cinder block. But to talk more about hempcrete or hemp lime, because I think that is really the lowest hanging fruit in terms of a hemp building material that we can use and potentially even produce in this area. It's something that can be hand hacked or sprayed into walls, and there is a spray system that is similar to what you might think of like spray foam, but it's actually spraying hempcrete, which is then hardening. And that can be used for either retrofitting existing buildings or for new construction. So this is kind of what the hemp herd looks like. If you were to purchase it for construction, you get it in these vats. And, like the people who were talking about bedding, Michael, we're importing this from France. So it'd be great if we could get it around here. That would save a lot in shipping everything all over the place and tariffs and so forth. And that hemp herd is mixed with lime. That's a whole other conversation. Could we make lime locally? And there are some potentials around that, but I guess that's another conference. But here's a shot of the URSA spray system, which is the technology that you use to kind of spray the hempcrete material into a wall. So you have like a giant mixer, which is mixing lime and hemp hurd, and then you've got a compressor, and you're kind of breaking it into this hopper, and the compressor's blowing it into the walls. So here's a shot of kind of what that looks like. You can see these tubes going to the what's called the lance, which this gentleman Damien is holding. He's the one who invented this equipment. And then there's a group of people who can help basically break up the excess and put it right back into the hopper, so you're not wasting any material. I mean, the bigger picture with all this is that, you know, if you're using this as opposed to, you know, plastic-based foams or any of the other, you know, insulation material that you can find at Lowe's and Home Depot, this is not something that's going to end up in a landfill. And I think, you know, there's a lot of environmentally conscious folks here. I think construction material is something between 40 and 50% of what ends up in our landfills. So, you know, that's a major leap in that direction, not to mention the health benefits of working with basically a non-toxic material for your home. So this is a shot of the hemp house we built in Accord, New York. It's, you know, hemp with lime plaster on it on the inside, and then it's got vented wood siding on the exterior. And, you know, if building with hemp becomes a more accepted practice, there are some best practices involved with that. And one of those is the way in which the walls handle moisture. They want to basically breathe to both sides. So this is a vented wood siding with basically air running behind the siding. And if it's built properly, these homes will naturally regulate the moisture and are basically impervious to mold because lime is such an alkaline environment. It can be integrated into like traditional 2x6 framing. So this is the frame of that house. There's some hybridization because there's, you know, large timbers used, exposed timbers used for the floor joists and rafters, but it's something that can work with the way that we build right now. In this case, we ended up wrapping this house in rock wool and spraying the hempcrete against it, and then putting the venting siding over that. This was to kind of reach the R value requirements of walls. We actually ended up exceeding that for this particular build, but there are also what's called thermal mass properties of hempcrete, which make it even better at holding heat than other materials that we currently use. This is a shot of what is basically what we call the wall sandwich, where the hemp is on the inside. And one of the great things about building with it is that you can plaster directly on it, which is also eliminates the need of sheetrock really for that wall. And you can see the kind of taping around the seams here. That is also replacing house wrap and Tyvek, because when you do a good air sealing combined with the lime plaster, that is the air seal of the building. So there's a lot of ways in which using this material makes building just much more ecological. Here's a sort of final shot of what these walls can look like. This is tinted lime plaster with you know, curved returns going back into the windows and doors. And it's a beautiful finish. It requires you know, knowledge of plastering, which is in some sense a little bit of a lost art. So if this is something that's going to be adopted, there is some education around, you know, both how to use hempcrete, how to build with it properly, and getting back to some of these sort of lost trades, which are really beautiful. And lime plaster is the one that really works best for this system. So in closing, and I'm just doing, you know, a little intro for the hemp building panel, but I want to leave you with a thought of, you know, we're already locally harvesting lumber, and I know in our work we really try to use the trees that have to come down anyway for a building site. And if you have enough time, you can incorporate those timbers into the building. It's a great way to build, and it's using, you know, all our natural local resources. It's minimizing the shipping of things all over the place, and economically, it's keeping the money here within our community. And can we also get there with hemp? It would be a wonderful thing. we do need the processing facility of some kind if we're going to be able to get there. But the end result would be much more healthy homes, and I think a much more healthy local economy, and using farms really instead of factories, although we do need that one decortication factory. But anyway, with that, I guess I could turn it over to the panel to get into some more of these ideas. So thank you.
Seth. And now I wanna invite our panelists and moderator for the so our moderators today are Chris Hewitt, Ulster County Legislature, and Mary Ulrich, Ag Program Leader with CC Orange County. And our panelists, I'll just let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, I'm Paul. Nice to meet you, Griddle. Good, nice to meet you.
So we have about an hour, and so we're gonna crank through these 5 folks quick in their introductions. So they're quickly gonna tell us who they are, what their business is, and one more thing. Oh, how many years has hemp been on your radar? Just a little tiny experience.
Forever. But I mean, hempcrete, I became interested in a few years ago. We started doing projects up here. We just finished 2 hempcrete houses, one in Gallatin and one in Stone Ridge. And our company's Woodstock Hempcrete. I have a lot of experience with lime mortars and stuff, things you would use for restoration of old row houses in New York City, that kind of thing, brownstones, and where the lime mortars are very important. And the kind of sand you use is subject to review by landmarks and so forth. And so I've got a lot of experience with that kind of plaster. And I like the hempcrete because, if you've ever been on the scaffolding watching somebody throw chunks of styrofoam behind the brick veneer with shitty waterproofing job, and it's like 20 layers of different plastic materials that are going to fail and cause mold, and then your client's going to be sued by the person that bought the condo and stuff like that. It's just like I like healthy materials and natural materials, and I just didn't want to start doing things up here, which is where I come from, using toxic material. And there's always compromise, like plastic plumbing, right? How do you get somebody to pay an extra 30 grand for copper plumbing? The right person, yes, but most people don't. So we started out trying to do entry-level houses under $1 million using natural materials, and turned into other things because people want other things. But that's my background. That's what we've been doing. We're going to do some more.
I just want to say, I've read about your projects in the paper. We're not far from, so we're in Ackworth, so great to meet you. Awesome to those that off the ground. And people already heard me talk, so I can probably pass along. But I'm Seth, I'm with Rondo Natural Builders.
Test. My name is Henry Gage. I came to industrial hemp back around 2019. Sal and I were living in New Jersey at the time, and we're making some longer-term plans around sustainability. And Dr. Sally has a background, she loves doing research, so we're talking about insulating. I was thinking we're going to insulate with spray foam, because that's all I did. She said, oh, did you know that there's something called hempcrete that you could use to insulate, and it's a plant? I said, no way. And so looked into it. So the short version of the story is Jeff and I in 2019 actually founded what we call the Hudson Valley Decortication Exploratory Committee for emissions, right? And COVID hit. But even during COVID, what happened is Home Depot was open. So what we did is we finished New York's first hemp-lime retrofit that's here in Kingston. People don't know about it because there wasn't really a benefit in us really just talking about it to say, oh, pat us on the back, look what we did. So what ended up happening is one thing led to another. because I have like multiple decades of experience with community work, including Jersey City Anti-Violence Coalition movement. And what we found ourselves doing is I ended up becoming president of the Hemp Build Association, U.S. Hemp Building Association, and a certification director because my background is project management. And I get hired by these banks, and I gave up on them a long time ago because of the dastardly things I've seen them done after I helped them fix their stuff. So we were on the team, we call ourselves the ICC 11. That was 11 people from all over the world who gathered together in Rochester, New York, to speak before the International Code Council to get a building code. So one thing led to another. Then it goes to, well, how do we get this thing to scale? We were fortunate to have opportunities to work with Dr. Smart for a number of years because you have to figure out your cultivars. We aren't experts at farmers, but we know people who are. So we're now at this point where we have a piece of equipment because of Cornell. We want to support them and the vision. We were talking to Corporation. There's a vision for doing that. The plan is that they're going to ask for about $5 million. And the intent is for us to use that to put decorticators around the state. I'll pause there.
Thanks, Henry. My name's Jeff Gagnon. I consider myself a natural builder. Started Rondout Natural Builders. I guess it was right around COVID times, 2019. Prior to that, we had a company, Sacred Spaces, and we, the group of people I work with, Seth and a few others, are very health and wellness orientated, very conscious of what we put in our bodies. And I've been involved, I'm 47 years old, I've been involved in building since I was 20 and have been exposed to a lot of toxins that are in the building industry, environment. And yeah, I just went on a journey to discover what was ailing me in my body in my 20s, and discovered that a lot of these environmental toxins that I was being exposed to were, for one, coming from the materials I was working with, and what, you know, our diets are another big one. But so it's kind of led me on this path down discovering alternative building materials. Started working with yoga studios around the city, doing design work in these yoga studios and exploring alternative materials like clay plasters, bamboo floorings, cork floorings, using salvaged materials when possible. So yeah, it's been a big part of my path that led me towards this idea of natural building using locally available materials. So in 2012, we built this straw bale house out in Coshocton, and actually the straw was very difficult to find locally, so we actually had to source it from the Midwest. We were able to source local clays actually from Crohongsin, and probably 95% of the material that went into that house, which was a 2,000 square foot house. That was the picture you saw from the slide set showed, was the last slide was probably 95% sourced from on site. So basically that house, other than the concrete and the roofing material, was bio-based and could be composted right back into the site. And we didn't, a lot of these materials you can directly recycle into another building, which is nice. But yeah, as far as the question on the hemp and when that, when I became aware, I mean, I was asked probably around 2014 about building a hempcrete house, and the price of materials at that time were extremely high. It wasn't until 2000, I think 18, that when the uh, the farm bill passed, I guess it was 2000, that it actually became a more viable building material. And then when it was approved with the ICC Code Council, that really opened the door to start building with it. Straw bale actually was approved by the ICC, I think a little bit before that, before hemp actually. So using these biofibers have been an accepted form of building for at least the last, 8 years or so. I think straw bale was maybe around 2015 or 16 that it was approved by the ICC. I actually, Chris Magwood up in Canada has been working with hemp. He was one of the earliest builders to utilize a hemp stock. He actually used it in a straw bale form because there was a shortage back in the 90s of straw for whatever reason, he said. So he actually sourced out some hemp bales and built a house using straight hemp bales and then coated it in clay plaster. So I took a workshop with Chris back in 2019, a hempcrete workshop. That was my introduction to working with the material. It's a great material. It's castable, very versatile material, very healthy to work with, other than breathing directly in the lime dust, which you don't want to do. It's all right. So that was my introduction to the material.
Hello, my name's Dr. Sally Warren, and I'm a board certified naturopath. And obviously, I'm interested in health and people's ability to be healthy. Herbs and food and everything else is an important part. But I was seeing a lot of people who were sick from their homes and their workplaces. And that is not necessarily the sick building syndrome. It's just the air quality, the materials that they're living in. So having worked with CBD, I thought I knew hemp, and I didn't. I did not realize what a shortage there was of this fabulous material. So we went on a hunt, literally, and trying to find people who were not only supplying it, but also knew what they were doing with building it. We bought an old house in Kingston, which was in need of serious gutting, thank goodness, because that's what we did. And we managed to find a supply of hemp hurd from France, which I think you've heard a number of times, which it's ridiculous when you think, but we could grow it locally. Yes, we can, and now he does, thankfully, so that we can learn how to grow it locally. But I looked at sourcing it from a number of different places, including Canada, and I thought, well, it's only across the lake, but it was more expensive to ship it by road than it was to bring it from France. So thankfully, we met Jeff and we met Cameron, and we learned all about how to use hemp as an infill, as a form of fabulous insulation. And we've been living in it for about 5 years. We do open our house up. If anybody is ever interested, we have a house in Kingston. A number of people have come to stay, and surprisingly, all their symptoms go away. I've had people with Lyme disease come to stay. I've had people with asthma come to stay. I've had people with heart disease, not that that exactly goes away, but a lot of their symptoms went away. They were insomniacs. They slept for 12 hours the first night. It's an amazing material for so many fabulous reasons. And I encourage everybody, it's so great to see so many people here interested in taking this journey with us. So thank you so much. Keep curious.
Thank you so much. I'm quite speechless because I turned 50 this year and I've been working on this dream since I was 15 years old, and read a book at that age called The Emperor Wears No Clothes about the industrial hemp industry, and my parents tried to burn that book. And so I've been passionate about a conference like this for a long time, and I'm actually speechless. I represent 180,000 people in Ulster County with a specific focus in Kerhonkson, Accord, and Mackinac. But usually I love speeches and talking, but I'm speechless. So Mary's gonna run this.
So we're kind of going to do a little like SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Seth already set us up very nicely for where the industry is a little bit. So if any of the panelists want to talk about what are the strengths of either the industry and or the product itself compared to, we've already heard a little bit of this, compared to conventional products, but also what are the near opportunities? What's a year down the road, 5 years down the road, but then also maybe 20 years down the road? What's the near opportunities and the far? I don't know if we want to go start with Sally and move back this way, or we want to start with Ken and go that way.
Okay. There's a problem with affordability of the material and availability of the material. I'm importing my hempcrete block from Belgium, and a pallet of 12-inch hempcrete block from Belgium, 30-centimeter hempcrete block, is like $550, and I bring in a couple of containers, and I can do my projects. If I tried to order 2 pallets in Pennsylvania a couple of months ago, they wanted $10,000 for 2 pallets of block. So, there's definitely a problem with availability and cost. If that can get solved, I think that more construction of the type of things we're doing and are interested in doing would be possible. But it's really limited by the fact that we have to get our material in Europe. And there are people making blocks in the U.S. There's some people doing great work. Derek Wolf in Colorado is making block based on nominal American dimensions, unlike the as opposed to the European 60-centimeter by 30-centimeter blocks, so that it can dovetail with conventional, masonry units as they're made here, and that's good. But someone's got to build a plant that can make 5 million blocks a year, and to do that, they have to have the herd. We have the line, we don't have the multi. So that's we're talking about $5 million for a decorticator. It sounds like a flimsy investment to me, and more has to be done to really get production happening, so that people can actually use this material, because it's prohibitively expensive for most people. And we can buy our material in Europe, but for a 2,500 square foot house with by the time you get to the line plaster and all the details that people may not be aware of that go along with using those kind of plasters, like the grounds you have to put in so you have something to nail your baseboard to, and all the preparation that's necessary to keep the plaster flat and so forth. We're about to list a house in Saugerties, and to do it in hempcrete is going to cost an extra $100,000. For a relatively modest house, a 2,500 foot 3-bedroom house, you have to spend another $100,000 to do it in hempcrete, and that's getting the stuff from Europe. So there's work to be done, and I'm really impressed with what everyone's doing, but there needs to be some capital behind it, and some business brains working on this stuff, which I am not. But that's my observation. Well put. Yeah, I wonder if, I mean, we're importing herd, I guess you're importing block. Maybe herd is a little more affordable than block, but that same issue is there with the herd. But even despite that, we're going to try this winter to make some panels, or at least work with the idea of using hempcrete in panelized form, where we actually could potentially make something that brings the price point down and makes it more affordable. So when we talk about where it's at, we can use, the spray apply equipment to make these panels. And but this is an early stage. We'd be working with Cameron, in Pennsylvania, who is an early adopter of hempcrete as well. And he's already been creating these panels. This is similar to like a SIPS panel. I don't know how familiar people are with these terms, but this is like imagine a piece of a wall you can pick up with a crane, and you're building that way, but you've already got these pre-made wall panels, and you're kind of connecting them on the job site. The build goes much faster. So that's kind of the direction that we're thinking right now. And yes, you can still build really nice homes for wealthy clients, but for this industry to get blown open, the price point has to come down, and it has to be made here. So that's to Henry.
Thank you. I'm going to take this opportunity to hand out this in case people haven't seen a sample. You can just kind of pass it around and send it to the next table. I'll start right here, and I'll grab my water also. And just wanted to add that for us, it kind of comes with this idea of a plan, a long-term vision. One of the early things we did is we looked at the 2030 plan, where it basically indicated that New York was interested in 70% renewables by the year 2030. Well, what does that mean? If you dig into that, they're wanting to rely on electric heat pumps in order to heat homes. You dig into that, what does that mean? It means that every home requires excellent insulation. Without that, the home is going to be cold because heat pumps do not have the same heat capacity as the hydronic system. It's probably at least 1/4 of that. And some people are shocked once they install a heat pump and they can't get the house warm. Then on a cold day like today, when it's 11 degrees outside, you turn your heat pump all the way up and you can set it at 87 degrees, but that just tells you the temperature that might be coming out of the nozzle before it goes into a defrost cycle, which means it runs in reverse. So all of these homes are going to need insulation. So we took that and we did a calculation which basically indicated that there's a $2 billion a year market for just the insulation alone. I heard someone earlier today say waste product. I smiled and looked at Sally and I looked at a lady and said, that's our bread and butter, because we like her. Now what we recognize is that there are a lot of regulations that have created unreasonable risk in the market and then causes the price to stay high. But the price will continue to decrease as more people use the materials, these more economics laws. That's why when we spoke at Parsons School of Design back around 2019, we were sitting there with Cameron, and the message we said to them, I was listening to them, I said, you know what? When I look around in the audience, I do not see people that represent the community. And they kind of looked at me and I said, oh my God, what's he going to do? And then I asked another question and said, well, how can you say you're going to save the earth with this plan? And you're basically talking about building brand new homes. You must realize that 99% of homes are built. It's as though they hadn't thought about it. And so then I said, you know what, Cameron, I think I'm done here. Let's continue with what we're doing. We're going to focus on the retrofit market because there's so many homes that could be retrofit immediately. Now, when it comes to cost, the home that we retrofit, which included plumbing, electrical, and some gardening work, plus the insulation, plus some finishes inside, it was all less than like $120,000. So the idea of cost is one that's a bit flexible. Depends on how you want to add it up. Like Sally will tell you, there's a cost to your health in terms of living in one of these houses. If you put spray foam in a wall and expect it to last more than 50 years, good luck. What Sally will tell you is that on our last trip to Europe, which we plan to open up to others, we saw houses or places that were like from the 1100s and still standing. Some of these houses around here
are falling apart because they're made out of wood.
Was wood.
Yeah, that's a quote I got from one of our friends with building science. I sat next to him after we got into building code. We were in Rochester in 2022 in the bar talking.
Yeah, so working with these materials, in particular, what we have experience with using in the form of the hempcrete or hemp-lime, yeah, the cost is higher now. However, we are also eliminating some other materials in the process that are pretty integral right now. A more conventional method, like Seth mentioned, the plywood and the drywall, and you slash those two materials right off the bottom line. I mean, that's a pretty big savings right there. The labor that goes into it, I mean, you're saving on hanging the drywall and the plywood and the surfacing of the drywall. So the compound, the paint, you're eliminating with the hempcrete, where putting 2 coats of lime directly on the face of the hempcrete. So it's actually a very efficient way to build a building, and the result is a very durable, healthy building enclosure. So yeah, and once as Seth mentioned, with the prefabrication or panelized hemp home, you can make that very efficient in a working situation that you streamline the building methods, and therefore cut back on time. Like if you can lay a panel down and cast it on the floor, and use gravity for putting the hemp into the wall. It's a very efficient way to build. So there's definitely ways that we can make this an efficient method. And yeah.
It's breaking up.
Yeah, no, I'll pass it on to Sally.
Hello. Good, it's working. The next 5 years are critical for this industry, I believe, and that we've made headway. It's really working with our legislators and making sure that we keep that headway and we keep moving forward to taking the burden of proof off the farmers. And that is going to help immensely. If we can say that we have a cultivar that is approved for our farmers, and they're able to grow it without fear. Buying a license is just the mere tip of growing this crop. So if we can do that, and if we can show investors, and we have investors who are waiting to build decortication and processing plants, because there's so much that you can do with this crop. So we have that. If we can prove that we can grow sufficient numbers to keep the processing plants going all year, productive and efficient and making money, then we have an industry. If we don't do that, we'll lose the ground that we have gained, and we will not have the industry that we're searching for and we're believing in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing to say with anybody who is concerned about the cost, the extra cost is an investment in the future. The buildings that are currently being built with existing materials are not long lasting. if, as Henry was saying, if we go to Europe, we'll see buildings that have been around centuries, and they do not require huge amounts of maintenance. Yes, sure, many of them have a lime wash on them and some lime plaster that needs repointing, but not in the same way where you have to tear down, put in a landfill, and rebuild with existing types of buildings. So you're investing in a longevity of your building. When we think about buying houses, buying the home, it's the biggest investment that most people make in their lives. So you're going to invest in something that maybe has a life of 30 years or something that you can leave as your legacy to your family. The other thing is your health. You're investing in your health. The health of the crop is incredible in what it gives back to the environment. But once you're living in a hemp house, you're not going to look back either, because your health is going to improve. And we're again investing. This is legacy work. So that's what I see with this.
So, mentioned a couple of hurdles. Not enough production, not enough processing, and so that gets to be chicken and the egg. Nobody wants to put a processor in until there's that crop, and nobody wants to grow the crop until they have someplace to sell it. So what's, aside from those hurdles, what's one thing in the industry that would, if it happened, and it could be legislative, it could be federal legislative or state legislative, it could be about building codes. What's one thing that you think would really give this industry a jolt, be a significant push to get to the next level?
Oh boy. Well, one thing that has come up in conversation with Henry, and Jeff, and Sally, and some other people, Larry, is, and this is small scale, this is more baby steps than we snap our fingers and have a factory, but getting a decorticator in our area onto a farm that wants to grow this, whatever the acreage is, we're a small amount of acreage, to get something processing and use that for building, just basically prime the pump a little bit. I mean, that's something we could do this next season if someone wants to give us a decorticator or let us use one. I'll pass it to Henry.
Well, there is a word on the decorticator because we are going to pick up we'll call it a desktop decorticator, if you will, a lab decorticator. So small scale, if you will, but we're going to pick up as soon as we feel that we're locally ready. Because the part of how we talk about this is like a chicken or egg problem. So it's like three parts to the right. And because it's so complex, there isn't necessarily a one thing in the market that we think is going to really turn things. It's a bit more subtle than that. So where we landed is that if I had to recommend one thing, I would say that everyone here get on this community platform that we've been talking with people from Rochester to New York City about, because we were researching, trying to figure out, well, how do we go forward? What it came down to was creating this platform. It's on the internet known as vocesforprogress.net. The reason we did that, vocesforprogress.net, we have the first version of the applications out there right now because we know we need working groups in every single community. And I'll tell you the reason why. When I was president of the Hemp Association, I noticed, well, first, a little more of my background. I read algorithms. I wrote a wash cell algorithm when I remember going to Denmark and helping this company, SimCorp Dimension, and talking with their chief architect for the finance part of the system and the chief software developer. And he said, it's not possible. And so, well, what do you mean? I did it. He didn't believe me. So it was me and their architect of finance that I showed them how to implement it in their system. So I spent years just going to Copenhagen, Denmark, working on that. So in other words, I love algorithms. So what we talked about is what would it look like for a solution for here for this problem. What it looks like is a system of working groups that has built into, see, it got deep because at the same time AI came out and it became terrifying because people are losing their jobs right now. They're not reporting the numbers, but it's devastating what AI and robots are doing in the hands of monsters. Like the fellow earlier who said, that's a real problem. And we have to face that also. So we took that in at the same time and said, okay, let's see. Okay, we see it. This system has to be operated based on what we call a public benefit contract model. Because if you go back and look at the Constitution, we listen to all of the Federalist Papers. Do you know that there's also anti-Federalist papers? Do you know that a lot of that stuff was done right here in Ulster County? This is where a majority of the Constitution was written. In other words, we're in the crucible of creative energy. So somehow it reached all the way back to indigenous culture, because that's where a lot of the constitutional ideas came from for centuries. There's the idea of pursuit of happiness. All of that is right there. So we realize that if we do this public benefit contract model just the right way, by algorithm, because we can't trust each other, we distribute a majority of the benefit to people, because we're not supposed to have tricky billionaires that are like draining the lake that all of us depend on.
Well, most of the people I speak with about this building system, there's a growing excitement among the community and support for just really getting these methods established and moving forward. So I think it really is going to take, the community support to move this forward, and I think I see that happening. So I think it already has really good momentum. New York State is now they adopted a revised edition of the Uniform Code, which is basically modeling the ICC. The state adopts usually the ICC code, and that's passing in the state December 31st, 2025. So that should hopefully clear the way for a lot of these methods to really mainstream and hopefully become more public, municipal type projects that we could move forward with. So I think, yeah, the networks are coming together, and that's why we're all here, right? So we're learning how to work with these materials. It's just, growing the awareness, spreading the word, and getting more people on the train to make this happen. So, I think this, it's really, in my mind, a public health technology that really can help our society heal and come together. So, there's lots of potential with these building systems. So I'm really looking forward to moving this further along and getting over the hurdles that we've faced in the last few years. So yeah.
Thanks.
Try this one. The chicken and egg situation is a constant conversation that we have. And like Henry said, it was why we put a lot of time and effort into forming the platform, so that we can network, so that any of us can reach out to each other to support the pilot projects that we're working on, the proof of concepts that we're working on, and the major building. The major block, we believe, and we've talked to so many farmers, We've had a fabulous support from Cornell, and we've thoroughly enjoyed and supported their work. It's really encouraging more people to grow this material. And of course, they're not going to grow it until there's a processing plant. And the stumbling block is getting those two situations to meet together and to come to some compromise. Now, we have also known people who had decortication centres, processing centres, that they started too early and they ran out of material, they had to shut their doors. Now, if and when, now let's just say when, we have the materials grown locally, we can start small and do the proof of concept and keep growing and keep doing the pilot projects, showing how to do this. Jeff's work, Seth's work, you know, Larry Smart's work, everybody's work together can show that there is such a strong support that this keeps rolling forwards and gaining momentum.
Would you like to add anything?
Sure. It's not really nice of me to just let you guys do all the talking, but I mean, you know, our government subsidizes GMO corn and soybean now, don't they? Right? Wouldn't it be something if they were to subsidize something that's actually healthy and helped people? Maybe that could happen. You know, foreign direct investment could be interesting, right? Like the guys from ISO Hemp in Belgium know how to set up a plant to make 5 million blocks a year. That's a small plant when you're talking about concrete block in the U.S. It's like nothing. 5 million blocks a year is Mickey Mouse, but it's a lot when you're talking about hempcrete and insulating residential homes. The way a row house is typically done, like you're doing a Manhattan row house, a Brooklyn brownstone. What happens is you go in, you gut the building out, you get your structural stuff together, get your floor levels and stair openings all done, and then you do chase walls around the perimeter of the building, usually in metal stud. Then the electricians and the plumbers and the HVAC guys come through and put all their stuff in, and they wreck everything. And then the carpenters have to come back and straighten out all the metal studs and brace them to the wall. And then they have to set them up for this foam insulation, which moves everything around. It expands and all the studs roll out. So they brace it and to try to prevent all those studs from moving, but their heart's not really in it because they're already pissed off because all the mechanical trades wrecked all their framing anyway, right? So they do their bracing, and then the foam guys come in and they don't really care if all those studs move around, because if they do, it's not their fault. It's because the carpenters didn't brace them well enough. So the studs move around, and now it's time for the drywall guys to come in and skin everything up, but nothing's where it's supposed to be. So now you're chopping and hacking and doing all this stuff. Do you think it ever winds up on the estimate for the project, what it really costs to deal with all that stuff? It doesn't. And, you know, the next time I'm doing a Manhattan row house, I want to run 7.5 centimeter hempcrete block all the way around the perimeter of the shell, continuous on the inside, and then chop in for your utilities and so forth, and plaster it over and be done with it, and eliminate all that framing and all that toxic spray foam and all the you know, all the irritation that goes along with that whole process, which is just terrible. So Ronan McDermott has a company called Hempfield Ireland, and I spent a lot of time with them in Ireland, and they're doing a lot of that kind of retrofit work. So what Henry's saying about retrofit, I completely agree with. I think it's different in wood framed houses, and you know, how do the air barriers get worked out, but it's definitely worth it. And you know, there's I think there's a good market there, and in commercial wood as well.
Just wanted to add another point. I may not have made it clear that the way we're doing this thing is there are two nonprofits that we started, right? So one is Build Green Now. So if you go to buildgreennow.net, we've actually posted some of the work that Seth and team were doing in Socrates a couple of weeks ago. Because what happened is Jacob Fish drove the compressor, the Air Easy system, along with the paddle mixer from Geneva, right? So we just got that in town, like within a month, right? And they already had a job lined up and worked on that. So what we did is we went over and created some jobs for some young people to do the cleanup work, things like that. We talk about creating jobs, makes opportunities for young people immediately. And then the other nonprofit we started is the Voices for Progress. That's a 501c6. So I thought I'd mention that because we have to do it that way because it's a community approach.
So I just, Chris, I don't, it came up here a little bit about government subsidizing. So Ulster County government did a thing, not subsidized, but.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that we talk a lot about state funding and federal funding. Sometimes we forget how powerful we are on the county level. We each have a legislator, and last year, well, in the last 80 years of prohibition, not only did we lose the equipment to process hemp, we lost the knowledge of how to process hemp. We also lost the policy of how to make it possible and how to create strong local economies with hemp. So I feel last year when we built the law that passed in December, we made a law in Ulster County that requires the consideration of hemp insulation in any capital project that Ulster County now undertakes. So there are rationales that the architect or design companies can use to get out of using it, but first they have to use industrial hemp insulation in capital projects. That's an example of building new policy with inspirational figures like Sally and Henry and others who look around and do research and say, how are we going to rebuild this policy? How do we start subsidizing hemp? And so to get the 25,000 to make this conference happen took months of struggle and persuasion on my part to convince other legislators to vote yes. Last week, 35,000 for next year failed because 15 legislators voted no. One of them was here earlier. And so we need to call our legislators and say, we support industrial hemp for the success of Main Street. And it could be that simple to make a huge shift.
I have to punctuate what he's saying because we've been going to these meetings for a while, for years, the legislative meetings. The way we're approaching this platform idea is that we're asking that someone would step up in each county in New York. So we start off with 62 people in each county. But then that person within their county, they work with people within their county. So for example, for us, we've got about 23 municipalities. So the idea is going to be we reach out, we just focus local, reach out to our 23 municipalities, and we talk about each one, teach one. We focus on teaching local people what we're talking about and showing them the benefits. And then we show them what's really going on with how money's spent. Because I've been in the room when like $1.75 million gets spent. And can I hear from the public? Are there any public comments? Silence. No one is there. So we can't blame folks. In other words, they don't get the support to make these decisions. So what Chris is talking about is incredibly important. We have some good legislation. We're going to write some more together. But then we want to make sure the community shows up and says, we're voting based on how you follow what we want.
And so, like, on a sort of a small scale, but I think it's a big problem with the larger industry, so not just the builders. Talk a little bit about working with architects, engineers. Now, Jeff mentioned Universal Municipal Building Code will now be meeting, and these products will meet Universal Municipal Building Code requirements, or you'll be able to use them starting the end of this year.
Yeah, well, there's the Henry, which he can speak a little more on the actual the ICC. It's particularly for hemp-lime. Okay. So, but in the framework of stick frame. So I don't think they would, I don't know the block, but it's a specific code for lime construction.
Block's not structural.
Yeah,
Reinforced concrete.
Yeah, what I should say, just to clarify, the name hempcrete is a misnomer, right? Because I remember sitting in a room with my colleagues and we were asking, well, what name should we put on this proposal that we're going to present to the ICC in 2022? And I said, well, We need a combination of both. First, we need to be scientifically accurate. So we're gonna start off in bold print, hemp-lime, everyone said yes. And then I said, then in parentheses, we'll put hempcrete. So we all agreed to that because the market knows the word hempcrete. But if you look at the code and what was actually approved, it was International Code Council Residential Building Code as insulation infill, non-structural.
Yeah, I mean,
For now.
It is instructional. Yeah. It is
For now.
instructional, but it's one material. It's not 20 layers of plastic stuff. That's why I love it. It's just the same, to screw it up, you'd have to leave a hole in the wall,
Like I have.
It's non-odorant, but it definitely has structural. It's like concrete without, rebar. When they work together, I mean, both of the materials are much stronger. So
yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the compressive strength to support a roof load, but it has some shear strength.
Right. So they're talking about two things, right? Two different things that are equally of value and important. He's talking about blocks. The blocks that he's talking about are load bearing, right? Because they're designed to bear loads. In other words,
No, you got me wrong there.
well, some of them.
Oh, you're talking the just biofiber blocks?
Let me say it this way. There's someone here right now that just got vitamin patent for hemp-based structural lumber. The reason I'm saying it this way is because we want to be careful about what we say is true. Right. Look at the details. Now, what I talked about was the insulation infill. That's one of many possibilities. You got so many different things that can be done with materials, so we don't need to disagree on them.
I'll just say that we were fortunate to work with one of the best engineers that I know, Jim Wagner out of Rosedale. He's probably, I think the foremost expert in New York State anyway on working with natural materials, and he's just been awesome going through straw bale, hempcrete. I mean, he's a very in demand busy person, but he's made that side pretty easy for us. So I feel lucky.
Do you guys know if architects at the national level or local at their meetings or the engineers are talking about this too?
They're talking about it. I mean, the ones I know in our area, it's at least on their radar. And we worked with an architect on the house we built. This was his first hempcrete house, and so he worked with the engineer because we knew, to kind of get right into the material. But I think it's on people's radar. I'm curious what your experience is with.
Yeah.
So one of the things we worked on is working with the American Institute of Architects and focusing on training classes so that most people can learn faster, because one of the challenges you have is getting accurate information out into the field. What happens at times is a few people know about it, and then they have a limit to their resource. So the approach we're taking in collaboration with Cornell and also with the University of Puerto Rico in San Juan School of Architecture, because they're going to loan us about 500 students to focus on project management. We're going to go probably January to talk with them. Is the idea that train the trainer, right? Because what that will do is it'll get the information out faster than working with the U.S. Hemp Building Association. If you aren't a member, consider joining, because that's another way we get the word out. The intent through that organization is to get the information to all states in the United States, get to all universities, and what we'll look to do is replicate the model here. And that's how you will start having influence. Now, the reason for working groups is that's how a lot of organizations like IEEE and ASTM and others get work done, is through working groups. So everything we talked about, like the people who were at the table I was sitting at, they talked about corticator to corticator. I said, wait a second, we're preaching to the choir. Let's stipulate that. The question is, what is 1, 2, and 3? Because the idea is that after this conference is over, we have to stay connected, right? Because when we lose each other on our phones, it's going to go into the world of Babel. But if we can stay connected, then each working group can continue and facilitate the details of the conversation, because you're working on a different kind of building than they're working on, than we're focused on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
No.
And so with the, I assume the engineers, the architects, that at a national level or even a global level are having this some of these products are not suitable in all environments. Let's talk a little bit about, because we got, like 5 more minutes before we go to questions. When are they not suitable? What would not be suitable here if folks want to use it? Or what are some of the tricky spots with using these materials?
It's in the details. I mean, typically you don't want your hempcrete getting soggy and wet. There's such a thing as rising damp in masonry construction. So it's typical to have through the wall flashing or a damp proof course. And what we did was, rather than have a flashing going through the wall or having a damp proof course, which is like flashing, we used waterproof concrete that has quartz added to the mix at the plant. So our 12-inch curb that goes around above the floor level around the perimeter of our foundation takes about 7 yards of concrete, and it's $40 a yard to put that stuff in, and it stops rising damp in the concrete. So that's how we did our curb, and we didn't have to fool around with damp proof courses. It's pretty effective. Having nice overhangs is good. A good strong exterior lime render will generally do the job. And if you have wood siding, that protects the hempcrete more. If you have a rain screen where your lime render on the outside of the building, stucco, for lack of a better word, completes the wall assembly of the hempcrete aspect. And then we prefer and put wood siding on in some cases, and that protects it to a degree. Just keeping water off it is a nice thing to do. It can handle a little bit though.
Yeah, I'd agree. Moisture management's product based. But I mean, moisture management in all our buildings is a problem. You wish everything was all figured out already, but once water gets in somewhere, things go haywire really fast.
I mean, good detailing for the air barrier.
The air barrier,
right, is pretty important.
Yeah.
What do we use? The Sika bond around the perimeter where the hempcrete is meeting our framed roof system. We're using Intello on a parallel core truss, and we use Sika bond on the base coat, so that we can annotate from the Sika bond to the Intello, and then do the plaster on the inside. And the plaster has a good air barrier qualities too. I think, and that's been tested. We passed our blower door test first time every time. So, it's not, we're making good balloons, but they're not really balloons because they breathe.
Yeah, and that's the key. I think also people just, builders understanding the material and the best practices, all the details.
Which is true of any building, right? Water management, keeping things breathing.
Yeah, there's an interesting word that gets used in the industry that's important to clarify: breathing, right? The building breathes. It's actually a misnomer of sorts, right? Because what's actually happening is there are two things, there are a couple things you're concerned about, but a couple at the top of mind are the ability to hold air. So in other words, if you wear a sweater that has lots of holes in it, it's trying to keep you warm, but because of the wind blowing, it's working against you because those convection currents are taking away the warm air, getting colder. But if you put a liner outside of yourself, then you tend to hold on to that air because it's trapping those convection currents. But the problem is that the liner itself has another issue because if it's plasticized, that means it's not vapor open. It's not breathing, it's not vapor open. So what happens is you build up moisture on the inside. The trouble with a lot of homes today is that they're plasticized. You put on latex paint, you got plastic wall assemblies. As soon as you boil a pot on the stove, you see the steam on the windows. What happens in our hemp house, you can see it immediately. I've shown examples when we've taught architects and contractors in the house. I would dash water on the wall. And what you'd see is first the wall, because we left them open, we left some without lime render, but you'd see the wall get dark, and it's basically absorbing the moisture. And then what would happen is pretty soon it's lighter and lighter, and then it's gone. So what you're basically seeing are a couple of physics properties. You're seeing the laws of these, it comes out of thermodynamics. You're seeing diffusion, right? And you're seeing evaporation. Now, the benefit of knowing those sciences, see, we're fortunate here in Ulster County to have people like around here that we know this stuff, and we're becoming market leaders for the state and not the nation. What I can literally see is that we have solutions, because one of my comments after Sally, she was the second one before we closed the code council. She said there's over $1 billion of lawsuits in the construction industry associated with rising dam, building mold. That was the first time I heard it, was the day before we spoke.
That sounds low to me.
It is low. That was a couple years ago. We're pretty sure it was low when I heard it. That was never in the paper. Oh my God. So my closing comment was that we need new solutions. For new solutions, we need new materials. Approved hemp line today. So they approved it, or they recommended it for adoption. Now, the other point is this. When you have an assembly like that, you basically have what you call a buffer, moisture or vapor buffer. So when you're cooking in the kitchen, what's literally happening, your wall is absorbing moisture, but it wants to get to equilibrium. So you got like this S curve from low humidity to high humidity that it's absorbed in the wall. So here's what that means. We have the opportunity to innovate materials to show the properties, because you can take a leaky house where you can't quite figure out where to seal the roof, and we can put some stuff up there and it'll do what it does. It'll absorb and diffuse, and it'll never have enough moisture content, plus because of the nature of the material, to allow mold and mildew to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So unless any of the panelists have a burning point they'd like to make before we finish up, I'm gonna call for questions.
Actually, I wanted to make one quick last comment, is that the hemp house that we have in Foxhall Avenue in Kingston, we will actually be doing a demonstration of spread line in the basement this weekend, I think.
I guess.
Yes.
You know what? Let me do this, because here's what we said we were going to do while we're here. Because see, we work together on stuff, right? Because we're working to get in with BOCES and blah 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 this and that. By the way, Larry, we have equipment. We have trackers on it also, so we know where it's always. If there's anyone interested in being part of a class, we have to charge for it because we have to cover costs. I'm just curious, would there be anyone interested as soon as Friday? I'm just gonna look around. Okay, then we'll schedule it at a different time. Now, if we find a couple people who are, then we'll do it. Otherwise, we're gonna put it online and see who wants to attend a training class.
This weekend.
Okay, so questions from the audience. Oh, you had your hand up first, even though you're a little further away.
So I'm a little bit frustrated sitting back here. I mean, it sounded like sounded like the discussion at the panel was like 3 years old. I mean, there was nothing really new being said there. I would have liked to have heard words like life cycle cost analysis and concepts which pertain to somebody wanting to invest a little bit more in their hempcrete home. So I think in order for this industry to grow, we need to take a little bit of a leap of our own education in terms of how to communicate to prospective home investors, not necessarily buyers, but investors who are going to live in there. Instead of the house falling apart after 50 years, maybe it has a life of 125 or 200 years. And those kind of concepts, the only new words that I've heard been said this afternoon is panelization from our party. So anyway, that's my frustration.
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. First of all, I received that fairly judgmental. People just all trying to do their best. And this isn't an investment seminar per se. I'll speak for myself. I'm here for community people. And in fact, some of the costs we're talking about, if you want to look at the life cycle costs, look at the cost of materials, that's available online. I can tell you the cost, but what good is that? Because most of the people here are into education, knowledge, and planning. So maybe if you want to invest, you might be looking at a very specific situation that you're interested in. I know people who are freezing and want us to build a warming center. So would you be willing to invest in a warming center? No, I got you. Let's do it another time. So I don't think we want to go that far. I don't want to. I'll put it that way. Should keep going for me.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I will. Is there good numbers on the return on investment? Because I think that's what, right? So instead of a $500,000 house lasting 50 years, if we have a $100-year house, how much would that cost? Are there good numbers? Is anybody doing that? Do we have any building that's old enough that we know it's going to last that long?
See, here's what's tricky about it. It depends on how you're getting the work done and what you want to do with it. Some people need to turn a profit fast, right? Other people just want to stay warm and keep their houses. What I said at Parsons School of Design is people are talking about building new homes. I have nothing against that, right? But what we're looking at is retrofitting homes to stop people from freezing, right? In a model like that, what happens is you get into material costs that could be on the order of $8,000 to $16,000, $18,000, $20,000 of materials. See, the majority of the cost comes in terms of labor. Now, if you look at a spray foam project, you might be looking at anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000, depending on whether you're using an open cell or closed cell foam. But the point is that yes, we can get the numbers. Now, if you are looking to invest, great. But I think the proof isn't necessarily you're disappointed. I accept that. I'll just leave it there.
Well, first, I do appreciate this concept for sure. This is something that I looked into, with kind of always company in terms of how else can we expand, how else can we get into this. But I was discouraged, and I guess this is a two-part question. I was discouraged, and that goes right into my question. How would you guys, or what would you guys all, knowing what you know, tell somebody who is getting discouraged into how could this, feasibility work for longevity? And then two, how do you let's actually fight, real opinions right now, even if it's not maybe with what other people might think. How do you think this is going to stack up against traditional construction materials just moving forward?
A lot of it is traditional construction.
Yep.
In a very, very, absolutely, yeah. When you put it like that, that is a great point. But going into, well, that's a very good point. As they've already shifted the paradigm, how do we think we can shift it back, or are we trying to integrate with? Are we trying to replace? Just in a broad sense, what does that look like?
I went into that a little bit earlier when I was discussing the assembly center row house. Right. When you're talking about the life cycle, cost analysis, and things like that, we're talking about materials here that are natural. And they can be used in a wide variety of ways, different types of assemblies, stick frame construction. My buildings have reinforced concrete superstructures. They're strong like a horse. So they're not going to fall down. They can, in 200 years, you might see some rebar and concrete standing there like a ruin from the turn of the century rust belt thing. And you can go and build your entry insulation around that structure.
We're not necessarily talking about it in that sense. I guess I'm more talking about consumer preference, stacking up against the traditional construction materials. Obviously, it's a great product for sure.
There's
I think there's so much back to solve it, but do we see the Casella, actually that's not going to be charged. Well, just kind of the larger construction developers switching into this as
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is a need for proof of concept. Right. So to answer your point, in every market, in my view, a way it grows is based on proof of concept, where you show the numbers before and after. Now, since this is a new market that's being developed, there are people that are taking risks to develop the market and to gather the data. So the point we're at with the market is first you wait until you have a cultivar that you can rely upon, which we're getting from Cornell. So Cornell is at the point where they're producing probably twice as much product per acre than a couple of years ago from the data that they presented. So with that, then you go into the idea of growing because you got to keep all your costs down. So we're just about to get into processing. The question is, how do you de-risk the market? So to de-risk that market is supporting purchasing and cortication, which everyone's talking about. See, all these things are planned, but it's so chicken or egg, it won't solve all here. What we'll do in our lane is we're focused on retrofit. He's focused on different type of construction, right? In the retrofit market, what we're going to do, we'll speak for ourselves, is we're going to demonstrate examples where regular homeowners can acquire the materials and possibly acquire the equipment, do some of the work themselves, and work with some professionals. And the goal is to get to a point where legislation, we can prove that by signing a piece of paper, getting low finance funding, you can actually insulate the house for maybe no out-of-pocket money. It gets financed. And if you save 30% of your energy financing, it'll pay for itself over about 18 years. So once you get to that point, it's just like solar. Solar only took off once that was there.
So we have to, so I know because I want to thank the panel. Come on. Skedaddle, so, but you'll be around. I saw a couple of hands, ask individuals, and who do I hand it over to now?
Closing
Leon.
remarks.
Leon is
Chris,
going to do the introductions for our last.
Yeah.
So thank you, panel members. And going to get everybody out of here on time because we know this is important. Okay.
What?
It's Woodstock.
Yeah.
Very cliche.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for such an interesting discussion. And we are about to wrap up our conference. You received feedback form with a QR code. So if you can scan the QR code and just share your feedback about today's event.
On the market, making the case. To engage, PE firms, banks, public sector, financing organizations. So, losing my voice because it's been a long day, and I'm sure it has for all of you. But again, thank you for your participation, and we're looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you, Kevin. I wanted to thank Kevin and the team at Economic Development of Ulster County, Jeff Dewan, Joshua, who is here, and Cornell Cooperative Extension for partnering and making this happen in under a year. We really moved fast for government, I think, by being so passionate and excited. We would call each other and it was like, okay, let's make more progress because this is so fun. I want to mention not only the relationships we're building in the room here, because yesterday most of us didn't know each other, and now we're going to start building these relationships. And I wanted to mention the relationship we've built for thousands of years with cannabis sativa, and the fact that the human body built a relationship with cannabinoids and coenzymes because we evolved together. And somebody mentioned that this place helped create the Constitution and working with Native peoples who understand that plants are alive and communicate with us. We've been vibrating with cannabis sativa for thousands of years. And Prohibition broke that relationship. It's conferences like this that will rebuild the relationships. And I just wanted to end by saying, we're all connected through the soil. And it's the roots that will bring us together. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you again next year.
So again, thank you everyone for your time today. Please remember to share feedback, and also we're gonna wrap up with our official part, but you're welcome to stay over and to continue with some networking.
Yes.
So get to know
Staying
each
to
other
network, right?
better, exchange some contacts, and also the majority of you that were registered, you expressed the willingness to be part of like an email group and to be in touch. So everyone could click yes, you will be put together and you will have the emails, and I hope that you will continue the conversation, and I hope this conference will lead to new developments and new opportunities in hemp industry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make sure everybody does feedback, please. Please, this is only fair.